Everybody knows about endangered animals, but did you know that there are 5 endangered reptiles that you can own responsibly? Today, let's go over them. My name's Adam, this is Ducky, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Before we even begin, I'd like to introduce you to Ducky. Ducky is the sibling of Sarah and Littlefoot, and if you're thinking Land Before Time, yes, that's exactly where she got her name from. I rehomed her 3 years ago, and she was rehomed back to me. Let's just get started. Number 5, and a bit of a shocker, sulcata tortoises. And the reason it's a shocker is because I didn't know that sulcatas were endangered. And by the way, all of these animals, I want to make sure if you want to buy them from a captive bred source. Do not buy them farmed or imported. They are endangered, and part of the reason a lot of these animals are endangered is because, well, people find them in the wild and ship them over here. And my criteria for being endangered is just somewhere on the threatened list. Sulcata tortoises are huge. They're big. They're from sub-Saharan Africa. These are the 3rd largest tortoise on the planet. And yes, there are 2 other ones, and both of them are endangered also, Aldabras and Galapagos. But I don't know if they make good pets, and part of the whole thing with this list is animals you can keep as pets. I mean, like, unless you won the lottery, you can't afford Galops or Aldabras, but a sulcata, you can. Now, there are things to consider if you do get one. Obviously, buy one that's captive bred. I don't know that anyone's shipping them over from Africa anymore. There's so many captive bred opportunities. There's so many of them being captive bred. You can buy them for pretty cheap captive bred, and, well, they produce a ton of babies. If you decide that you're gonna get one, there are other tortoises, and they are endangered as well, or vulnerable. Indian star tortoises, for example, elongated tortoises, and those are a little bit smaller. Sulcatas, I just think, are more popular, easier to find. If you've got a big enclosure, we're talking about, I don't know, like an outside pen, if you could, part of your yard. There are these big, gentle giants. They're herbivores. They make really great pets. It's just something to consider because they are huge. And I had to put them on the list because I had no idea. Before I started doing the research for this video, I would have never guessed a million years that they're endangered in the wild, but wildfires and cattle. So I guess it's not just the farts of cows that are bad for the environment. Number 4, and maybe the coolest on the list, sailfin dragons. These guys are from the Philippines and New Guinea. They are maybe one of the most wild looking reptiles you could possibly think of. Absolutely insane. These things, they've got the sail, they have this nose on them. They look unbelievably cool. These guys are also considered vulnerable for a different reason though. No cows here, simply because humans like to hunt them for food and for export as well, which brings back the whole thing of make sure that you are buying a captive bred baby, not something that's been shipped in or farmed and shipped in. I'm just kind of baiting you in with this anyway to bring attention to the big thing for most of these reptiles. Habitat loss. Almost every animal on this list is going to be extinct within our lifetimes because we just take away their homes to make room for us to make money. Okay, no more negativity, bah humbug, it's close to Christmas. Why are these guys so cool? Well, it's like a 3 or 4.5 foot animal, depending, somewhere in between, that likes to be in the trees, but also needs an aquatic environment, which means, well, it's going to be really difficult to take care of them. This is not for a beginner or novice or intermediate keeper. This is an expert level species, for sure. Their care really isn't that difficult. It's just, how many people do you know have basically the equivalent of a big closet, or even bigger, like a room, half of a room, to give to these guys, unless you live in like Florida and you can have a big enclosure, like a big pen outside with the extra height. I just mean for most of us that live in a place where, I don't know, like where I live and it snows for 4 or 5 months of the year, it's really difficult for me to have one of these guys, but they are maybe one of the coolest species on the freaking planet. And although they look like they breathe fire and eat humans, they're actually omnivores. They're like garbage disposals. They'll eat basically anything that they think is going to be healthy, including animals and plants. Number 3, and one I actually have in my own collection, Burmese pythons. Berms were a dream reptile forever. I finally got one, an albino Burmese python named Thunder. I love this little girl. She's gonna grow up to be a big girl though. These guys get somewhere between 12, 15 feet, sometimes even bigger. They've been reported over 20 feet. This is by no means a regular occurrence, but they do get big, and that is something to take into consideration. Before we go there, why are they endangered? Well, they're technically vulnerable. Again, they're vulnerable, and it's because people hunt them for food and for their skin. And it really isn't that weird. It's a big animal with a ton of meat on it. It makes sense. It's too bad that they're hunting them into basically endangerment, but I guess it makes sense. You see something big and then you eat it because it can feed a lot of people. And they are from areas where if you find something that big, it'd be like a big score for your town or village or whatever. Not saying that everyone that finds one is living in like an impoverished area, but they do come from places of the world where you might see one of these things and think, jackpot, we can eat this week. And something to consider with a lot of these animals, Burms included, because you might be thinking, yeah, okay, but Burms will lay like 50 eggs or maybe even more. They'll lay a ton of eggs. So wouldn't they be able to repopulate pretty quickly? Well, sort of, but the survival rate is something around 1% in the wild. So sure, you have 40 something eggs or 50 eggs or 60 eggs, but maybe one of those babies, maybe one will reach adulthood. And even if they do reach adulthood, it takes a long time. It's gonna take 5 years before they get to full size, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit longer, but somewhere in that window. And in that time, they are a snack for birds of prey, or for crocodilians perhaps, or for larger mammals. Basically anything that eats anything that is moving is going to be able to eat these when they're babies, because they're going to come out pretty small. And to be evasive for a long time, well, that's pretty difficult when you're in an area that has a lot of natural predators. And that's why we have the issue in Florida, where in Florida we have a problem with invasive species like Burmese pythons. We just caught one in Florida, like last week, 150 pounds, 8 feet long. Holy cow, 18 feet. 18 feet. That is a huge animal, a big snake. So the reason that we have that problem there is because, well, a lot of area where there's no people and there's not really a lot of natural predators, and that's the big difference. And that's why you can have, where they're from, parts of Asia, they're going into vulnerability and endangerment, and here they're just kind of like flourishing, basically. And by here, I mean North America and Florida. If you're thinking about getting one, big cage, lots of food, but as they get bigger and older, they can be one of the tamest, most sweet snakes, and a fan favorite for those who like to use animals for educational purposes. A Burmese python is a big puppy dog a lot of the time, and just really awesome. A fantastic snake. I'm so happy I've got a Burmese python. Number 2, and a dream reptile of mine, rhino iguanas. These are one of the most majestic looking, beautiful animals that I've ever seen in my life. I think they're absolutely fantastic. They come from Haiti and the Dominican Republic. They share an island, which name I can't remember, but we'll put on the screen. Basically, these guys come from a place where you might go on vacation and be able to see them, which is really cool. And these are actually endangered. On the threatened list, they are classified as endangered, and that's because of habitat loss mostly. Habitat loss and invasive species coming and basically raiding their nests and killing them and eating them as well. And again, it takes them a long time to get old enough to be sexually mature. They only lay about 17 eggs at a time, and although they hatch pretty quickly, it's hard to replace themselves as they grow. Just take a second to appreciate how beautiful this gecko is, which is not endangered, but like, look at her. Now these reptiles sadly are illegal in Canada where I live, so I'll never have one unless I get to fulfill my dream of moving to the States one day. But these guys, I don't know, it just seems like one of those animals that if you see, you just have to stop and stare at. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and the reason we can't have them here is they are CITES protected because of their endangerment. So we are doing something to mitigate the endangerment of them, but at the end of the day, we just have to make sure that if we buy them from a captive bred source. I am just gonna beat this dead horse. The entire point of the video is if you buy something that might be endangered, get it from an ethical source. Don't get it from someone who brought it in over the border or brought it in illegally or whatever. Make sure that we're trying to preserve the populations of these animals in the wild. But I mean, a 2 to 4 foot animal, sometimes up to 4.5 feet, That's a pretty cool animal. Mostly ground-dwelling, mostly herbivores, although they will eat the occasional crustacean or dead animal, basically. I don't know, just absolutely amazing, and I don't know, maybe one day, if I get to fulfill my dream, I'll be able to have one of myself. But for now, let's just look at them from afar and enjoy. Number 1, endangered, very cool, but you could possibly own reptile, Chinese crocodile lizards. These guys, you knew was going to be on the list. These guys are from the south of China and the northern part of Vietnam. There possibly are only 1,000 of these left in the wild. And that's simply because of habitat loss and harvesting. And this is the most important one. If you are going to get one, which is very difficult to find, they're very expensive and they're hard to keep. So not the greatest pets. But if you do get one, make sure it's captive bred, because these guys are harvested, and that's one of the reasons that they are losing their population in the wild. And in fact, people who harvest these things are paid very well, sometimes up to what's equivalent of a 2-month salary for one live individual in the southern parts of China. So again, very important, don't get one that's sent over from China. Get one that's captive bred. And we are having captive bred babies being born in the US and parts of Europe as well. So it is possible to get these captive bred. And I think that as we realize the importance of keeping their numbers as high as possible in the wild, we're going to start seeing more captive breeding projects with these animals. Now again, these are not the easiest to breed. They're not the easiest to keep. You have to cool them down to like 15 degrees Celsius. Yep, using metric because you guys asked me to, in order to get them to go into a breeding behavior to begin with. Just not easy all the way around, but they are so cool. They are so requested. I get so many requests, talk about Chinese crocodile lizards. So here we are. And I don't think there's a better list to put them on. Yeah, they are semi-aquatic. They are super cool. They don't get super big, but I think the most important thing is to draw attention to something that is this beautiful and this endangered, because 1,000 of them in the wild, that's really not that many. Something I found really cool, and I didn't know until I did the research for the video, is that they're viviparous, which means that they don't lay eggs, and they come out live, and their gestation period is 9 months. That's crazy. That's what a human is, right? I think we all know that probably. 9 months is a long time for any species, especially a small reptile like this, and they give birth to about 12 individuals, but still, that's not very many. And again, it takes forever for them to get up to size and breed and the whole thing. So let's just, I don't know, enjoy like the pictures I'm throwing up here, because these are crazy looking. These are like wild looking animals. So there you go. Top 5 endangered reptiles that you can also own responsibly. What do you think? Did I miss something on the list? What did you think shouldn't have been on the list? Let me know in the comment section below. A giant thank you, as always, to the Patreon supporters. Again, one of you guys gave me the idea. And if you want something like discounts on the merch, to see these videos early, extra videos, sneak peeks, get to know about animals in my collection I don't talk about on the regular channel, for as little as $1 a month, Patreon. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, a special thank you to our friends at Grubterra for sending the absolute best black soldier fly larva, my book dropped, black soldier fly larva that you can buy, ship right to your door in the US at an amazing price, and 10% discount with code WWR at checkout. And if you're thinking about getting something huge like a Burmese python or something small like a leopard gecko, you can go to my friends at Cages Custom Enclosures for the absolute best PVC enclosures you could possibly use. My bearded dragon is in one of these. Absolutely amazing. I could not be happier. And you get free door handles if you use the link below and code WWR at checkout. I'm out of breath. And that was a pretty good list, I think. Hit subscribe. See you on Thursday. Nope, Monday.